Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 19th June, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Israel's defense minister has directed attacks intended to weaken the Iranian regime. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke of a historic mission to liberate Iran while at a Beersheba hospital damaged by an Iranian missile. Israel reports destroying 120 Iranian air defense systems, exposing military weaknesses, but acknowledges Iran's ballistic missile arsenal remains a threat. Israel alleges Iran used a missile carrying cluster munitions, banned by over 100 nations, to strike the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, causing damage and injuries. Neither country is a signatory to the ban. An inactive Iranian nuclear site was also targeted. In Iran, long lines formed at gas stations in Tehran as citizens attempted to stockpile fuel. The potential for U.S. military intervention in Iran now rests with President Donald Trump, while European nations are focusing on diplomatic resolutions. This conflict has also exposed divisions within the MAGA movement over U.S. involvement. The situation has further imperiled Afghan refugees in Iran, leaving them trapped and vulnerable. A Samoan woman, stranded in Israel after her flight was cancelled, is seeking safety. Israel considers a nuclear-armed Iran a critical threat. U.S. intelligence estimates suggest Iran could develop a nuclear weapon within months to a year. To conclude, the Israeli military censor has placed new restrictions on journalists covering the war. Zambia faces a dire situation as ordinary citizens suffer from the impact of global looting and local corruption. This has resulted in billions of dollars in lost revenue, stemming from the actions of multinational corporations and insiders with close ties to the Zambian state. Turning to Denmark, the nation is deploying US-made sail drones in the Baltic Sea. This action aims to safeguard undersea cables against potential hybrid attacks from Russia. The move has sparked some criticism, with concerns raised about Denmark's increasingly close alignment with the U.S. in digital security matters. In Russia, an economic downturn looms as the economy minister signals an impending recession. The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum highlighted the economic consequences of the war in Ukraine, leading to a boycott by major American investors. President Vladimir Putin met with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto in St. Petersburg, reinforcing the strengthening relationship between the two nations. Furthermore, Russia has cautioned the U.S. against any military intervention in the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel, which follows a recent exchange of strikes. A Russian drone and missile attack in Kyiv, Ukraine, resulted in the death of Fred Grandy, an Oregon native who was volunteering with a charity. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for increased international pressure on Moscow after a deadly Russian missile strike struck an apartment building in Kyiv. The aforementioned Fred Grandy, an Oregon native volunteering in Kyiv, was killed in the Russian drone and missile assault, having been upset by the U.S.'s reversal of support for Ukraine. In the United States, Russia has warned against any military intervention in the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. The U.S. President Donald Trump's administration extended the deadline for the sale or divestment of TikTok to September 17 via an executive order. Some analysts suggest that President Trump, despite promises of global peace, is being drawn into a potentially catastrophic war with Iran by Israel. As previously mentioned, Denmark is deploying US-made sail drones in the Baltic Sea to protect undersea cables from potential Russian hybrid attacks, raising questions about its growing digital security ties with the U.S. Regarding the Iran and Israel conflict, Russia has cautioned the U.S. against any military intervention, following an exchange of strikes. Analysts suggest that US President Donald Trump, despite campaigning on global peace, is being drawn into a potentially catastrophic war by Israel's actions with Iran. Finally, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg, solidifying the deepening relationship between Russia and Indonesia. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has announced the deployment of the ADF to help Australians leave Iran amid airspace closures. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is exploring ways to boost productivity, hinting at possibilities like a 3-day work week or higher wages. Meanwhile, Australia's attempt to ban social media for those under 16 faces hurdle. Early tests of age verification tech showed flaws, including unreliable tools and inaccurate face scans, but later trials suggest digital age checks can be effective. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced CAD $2.4 billion in artificial intelligence funding to boost the nation's AI edge. The investment aims to support researchers, startups, and scale-up companies. Separately, Canada is experiencing a surge in asylum claims. The Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada is working to address the backlog and process claims more efficiently. Across the Atlantic, in France, President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for greater European Union autonomy in defense and technology. Macron is urging EU nations to prioritize European companies and reduce reliance on external powers. The French government also faces continued scrutiny over its handling of recent social unrest. Investigations are ongoing into alleged police misconduct during protests. Meanwhile, in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is navigating a complex political landscape as his coalition government faces internal divisions on key policy issues. Debates over energy policy and immigration continue to test the coalition's stability. Germany is also grappling with the economic consequences of the war in Ukraine, including rising energy prices and supply chain disruption. India is under scrutiny for allegedly deporting Indian Muslims to Bangladesh, raising alarms about potential persecution. Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal is optimistic about securing a beneficial trade deal with the United States, particularly with tariff-related deadlines looming on July 9. In response to official directives aimed at improving efficiency following a recent crash, Air India will be scaling back its international flight schedule to ensure smoother operation. In more positive economic news, the recently finalized free trade agreement FTA between New Delhi and London is predicted to significantly increase sales of UK Scotch whisky in India, the world's largest market for the spirit, attributable to the reduction in tariff. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez dismissed NATO's proposal for a 5% GDP defense spending target as unrealistic. He indicated Spain would not commit to this at the next NATO summit. Furthermore, Spain has concluded that a large-scale power outage in April was due to technical malfunctions and planning errors, rather than a cyber attack. Transitioning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced increased pressure to address rising inflation. The Bank of Canada has raised interest rates to combat inflation, but critics argue that more fiscal measures are needed. The opposition party is calling for targeted tax relief to help low-income families cope with the rising cost of living. Focusing now on Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is working to strengthen environmental regulations and combat deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. He announced new policies aimed at curbing illegal mining and logging activities. These efforts are part of Brazil's commitment to reducing carbon emissions and protecting biodiversity. Thailand's Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra issued an apology following the leak of a phone conversation she had with former Cambodian leader Hun Sen, a situation that has stirred considerable discontent and poses a challenge to her governing coalition. The controversy has fueled calls for Shinawatра's resignation, with detractors arguing that the leaked call paints a picture of her as being politically vulnerable. Simultaneously, Sachinda Prayun, the Thai general, whose 1992 appointment as Prime Minister sparked significant controversy after he had publicly denied seeking the position, passed away at 91 years old. His ascension to power precipitated the Black May uprising, which was met with forceful military intervention. Pakistan's relationship with the U.S. appears to be warming, evidenced by the cordial welcome Field Marshal Azim Munir, Pakistan's army chief, received in Washington, potentially indicating a recalibration of strategic alliances. Economically, Pakistan has obtained a $1 billion financing agreement for 5 years, facilitated by Dubai Islamic Bank and Standard Chartered Bank. Domestically, Pakistan's security forces are adopting drone technology to combat militants, a method they formally condemned when utilized by the U.S. Brazil recently enacted a law in Rio de Janeiro requiring public hospitals to display anti-abortion signs, a move criticized by reproductive rights advocates who fear increasing restrictions on abortion access. Meanwhile, in a display of environmental advocacy, Catholic worshippers in Rio de Janeiro crafted an eco-friendly carpet in front of the Christ, the Redeemer statue. Iran's foreign minister is set to meet with European counterparts in Geneva, as reported by state media, against the backdrop of continued Israeli airstrikes targeting Iranian interests. These European officials, who have largely observed the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran from the periphery, will attempt to exert limited influence during the meeting. France is currently witnessing a trial against 3 employees of a company that provides grape pickers to champagne producers who are accused of human trafficking and worker exploitation during seasonal harvest. Simultaneously, in Lyon, a former Interpol official has been arrested amidst allegations of participation in a corruption ring dubbed the Big Carousel, reportedly operating within Interpol's headquarters. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure as the country grapples with rising inflation and housing costs. Recent polls indicate a decline in public support, prompting discussions on potential policy adjustments to address economic concerns. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, intense fighting continues in the eastern regions, particularly around the city of Bakhmut. International aid efforts are focused on providing humanitarian assistance to displaced civilians and bolstering the country's defense capabilities amid ongoing Russian aggression. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.